Sorted. Gonna show you how OpenPrint works. Let's get started. So, over here we have the OpenPrint. This is currently the main page. In here we have the name of your print, as well as the color, the flux route of, where all of your packed flux is gonna be, a pack button, an unpack button, an active state of the print, as well as, an auto mode to toggle this one automatically based off the Z distance, as you can see. Next up, if we want to create something in the OpenPrint, we have to obviously set it to active. And then we can just start adding some flux. And you will see it will have this nice little border around it, wherever we have the flux. This is currently 3D mode. So all of the protoflux can be used in 3D. And yeah, I'm going to make it a bit more wider. But what other things can we do with the print? All of that we find in the print section down here. In here we have the print mode, which is currently set to 3D. We can turn it into 2D. And now, when we re-grab all of the flux, it's actually aligned on a 2D grid. And you will see we also have a small cursor. And any nodes we place are going to be placed on this grid. Using these two arrows, we can move the grid forward and backwards. So we can still work in 3D, but still in the 2D environment. So like a 2.5D. Next up, we're just going to move this one here. Next up is going to be the node size, which is going to change it for all the nodes on the print, no matter if it's 2D or 3D. And you can also disable it, so you can have some nodes bigger, some smaller, depending on how you want it. Virtual Parent virtually parents the print to whatever slot you have in here. So if I enable it, you will see we have suddenly our flux nodes in here. Why is that? Well, for the usage of dynamic variables as well as dynamic impulses, this is very useful. Next up, all of these settings are going to be saved on a print-to-print basis. Same with the color, name, etc., obviously. So you don't have to reapply all the settings each time you open all of your prints. Inside of functions, we have a bunch of nifty things. We have a quick select section. So if I'm just gonna quickly remove all of those. In here, I can quickly select flux routes of specific objects. So in the world route, if there would be any, I could click this and it would show an unpacked panel directly. Same with the user space and the avatar, which I can show, but it's just a default flux. And held item. So if I'm gonna duplicate this print real quick, if I hold this and then press held item, then it shows all the flux of the print itself. So, and then additionally, you can also create it if it doesn't exist. So note how user space didn't have one. Well, if we create it, it does get created. It's just, doesn't have any flux in there yet, so doesn't show an unpack panel. Down here we have some nifty other functions. One that is very simple, delete nodes on print. Double click this one, deletes all the nodes. Snap nodes to grid, which can be kind of useful for when you originally worked in 3D and maybe want to transfer it over to 2D, as well as with the feature we're going to look at in a second. So if I'm enable 2D and snap nodes to grid, it grabs all of them and smacks them on there. Then the last thing is transfer. We're going to look at that in a second. And the last section is cloud settings. In here, you can change some of the stuff of the print, like the default color that gets selected every time you pack it, or spawn a new print out. And the 2D texture, which is the grid texture you see here in the background. Currently, it's set to dots. Now it's flat, grid, or none, depending on what you want. Now, what I'm doing right here is selecting something. A lot of things on the print work off gestures. So selecting something is done by grabbing or the grip button on your controller, primary, and the secondary button. And then you see I can draw a selection like this. When I have something selected, I use grab and menu to move it around. I don't have to actually grab the selection itself. My hand can be somewhere. Does it projection based off the print, so currently it's a bit harsh. I just point somewhere where there's nothing, and then you can just move all the nodes. Over here, we can delete the selection, deselect the selection, and duplicate it. So we can take all of our flux, duplicate it once more up there, and then, deselect it over here. That is the selection. Next up, there is another gesture for moving the grid back and forth, so you don't always have to go into the print category, which is grab and double tapping secondary, and then either going front or back with your hand. So grab, double tap this, and going in front shifts it to the back, as you can see. So we can place our nodes there. Fuck's sake. And then this, right back again, and they get put in the front. Simple enough. Next up, the print is able to not only unpack prints made with itself, but also from every single other major print out there, including red prints, cube prints, my old version of the OpenPrint, also vanilla flux, but that's a bit more special. All of them are listed a tiny bit differently. So if anything is packed by a red print, it will have a small R in front of it. With a cube print, it's going to be a Q. I'm just going to disable this so the cursor is not going to be there. For the legacy OpenPrint, it's going to be a small O, and the normal flux is just going to be this. When unpacking, it's going to attempt to take the settings of those prints. Like for red print, now it had the red color, this name, etc. And, since a red print is always 2D, it is always going to enable 2D. But in the case of a red print now, it's going to delete all the comments because it doesn't support it yet. And if you pack it again, obviously it's going to pack it into my format, into this one, and not back into the OpenPrint, red print one. So once we pack, it's in here, and that's it. Now, what you just saw was a little bit of a special pack panel, which you may not be used to from stuff like the red print. So, when we pack some flux, we get a small menu where we want to pack it into. We can press this plus button to create a group. So let's say I'm going to call it test. So now we have the group test in here, and I can save it into the test group or into just the root of the thing itself. So let's pack it into test. And when we press unpack, we now see that the test category is in here with our flux. And if I press unpack on it again, there it is. Now, when you already packed something into somewhere once, it is going to remember that last location when you unpack it again. So you don't always have to shift around. So just double tap and it's going to be packed again. Next up is actually going to be how to get the vanilla packed flux over. That's why we get back to the transfer functionality. So what you want to do if you want to get vanilla flux on the print is unpack it. Now it's going to be over here. Take the OpenPrint, place it in relation to where you want it to be compared to all of the other flux. Then we're going to grab the pack slot, put it in here, go to functions, press transfer, and as you can see, it already grabbed all of the nodes. And now we could just pack it and that's it. But it leaves behind the folder, as you can see. So just to make sure that there are no references on this thing directly, you can switch them out or whatever the fuck. That's up to you. But now it's on the pack, and I can print it. On the printer, and I can pack it. Now, next up, another feature is the simple print. Because you're not always going to have a flux route. Maybe you're just going to be there working a little bit, doing your funny flux. Just connect here, you there, done. And, I just want to save it as an object and maybe use it later. you can see the pack button already changed to pack into simple print because we do not have a root in here. If we would have a root in there, it would instantly change to just packing it into there. So if we pack it into a simple print, we get this little boy. And this one you can now save into your inventory. It has the name of whatever you gave it up here, so that you're able to see it in your inventory. Once we want to bring it back into this thing, we go to Functions, and while holding this, click the held item. And that is going to inject it back into the OpenPrint, so we can use it. Last but not least, this little thing here is a movement button for the entire thing. Mostly intended for 2D mode, but it also works in 3D. So you can move all of the flux at once along like a grid style thing, or like with steps, as you can see here. And yeah, that's basically it for the entire OpenPrint. Have fun creating.